Listen, no intro for this podcast. Let's get straight into it. What is going on, people? Welcome back to the CEOCAST, the number one podcast for showcasing business and entrepreneurship. Now, today, this is a different one, a special one, because the first time ever in history on CEOCAST, I'm sat here as a guest. And it's the podcast you've all been waiting for, the one where I'm being interviewed. And I thought, who's better to interview me than someone who knows me best and someone who can ask questions properly? And this is a confession that I've been hiding for a long time now. I'm here with my one and only twin brother, Khalid. What's going on, Khalid?
Yes, mate. What's happening?
Nothing, man. 100k subscribers. Here we are. I just want to make it clear as well. I didn't really want to do this, but I did tell the people that when I get to 100k subscribers, I'll be here sat on the podcast. But I don't want to act like I've made it because I haven't. We still got so much more to do and so much more to go. But I'm sure we'll get into that later on in this podcast.
So tell me, bro, you hit 100k subscribers now. How does that make you feel? Before we get into it, make sure you subscribe and set the bell notification to all so you never miss a single episode.
100k subscribers. I'll tell you what, bro. It feels, you know, building up to it. I'll be real. Building up to it, it didn't feel like it was going to be something so big. Because you know when you're seeing 99, you see 99.5, whatever. It feels like, all right, cool. 100k is going to come soon. I know I'm going to hit it. So it is what it is, sort of thing. We'll move on to the next thing. But I can't lie, when I woke up today, we're filming this on the day that I hit 100k subscribers. I woke up, saw 100k, and I was just like, raw. Like, actually 100,000 people are tuning in. When you think about it, that's filling up stadiums. I think the O2 holds about 80,000 or something like that. So that's filling up the whole of that plus more. That's overflow O2 stadium for the subscriber level. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's actually crazy when you think about it, 100,000. And that's just the start of what CEOCAST is.
So what, you think you're a big man after 100k, yeah?
Bro, as I just said, this is the start of CEOCAST. I don't think I'm no big man. As I said, I don't want to be sat here, but I told the people and I promised them that when I get 100k, I'm going to do an interview.
All right, listen, Raheem, we're just going to get straight into it. Why did you name it CEOCAST?
Why did I name it CEOCAST? You want a very simple answer or you want a long explanation?
Bro, don't long it out. Give the viewers exactly what they want.
All right, I took, who am I going to interview? CEOs. What's a podcast? A podcast. Let's cut out the pod, put CEO together, CEOCAST. Done.
All right, you explained it very briefly, but how much thought did you actually give it?
There was, you know what, leading up to the name, there was so many names I was thinking of, and then randomly, within a split second, CEOCAST came to my mind. At first, the podcast was going to be called Journey to Success, and I was like, no, that sounds so cliche and so dead. So then I was like, yeah, CEOCAST it is, and it kind of rolled off the tongue a bit better.
So break it down for us, Raheem, man. What were you doing on that day when that thought came into your head?
I feel like we've got to dive deeper to get into that question, but just to answer it very briefly, I was in the office at BT doing my usual job, which I'm sure we'll get into later on in this podcast, but I remember I was on my lunch break or something, and I randomly thought of like starting a podcast essentially. And that's where I was. I just on my lunch break, I was outside on a little vape break, and CEOCAST came to my head. I was like, you know what, I want to learn about business. And as I said, we'll go into this later on in the podcast as well, but I want to learn about business. How can I find and start a business? And I was like, you know what, I need to chat to CEOs. I need to see how to do this properly. And that's exactly, like, I don't know how to paint you the picture, but just imagine big office building, me outside. I was on the phone to my boy. I was like, yo, you got a clothing line. What are you saying? Do you want to do an interview? And he was like, yeah, let's go.
So was there anything significant that triggered you? I mean, you could have started anything. You could have started a vlog channel. You could have started a business. You could have started doing whatever the case may be. But what actually triggered you to start a podcast? Because look, Raheem, I know you. We grew up together. You're an introvert. For you to get the nerve, it's a bit mad. I can't lie. So how did you actually start a podcast?
I think we've got to slightly dive it back a bit, because I feel like leading up to the podcast, there's so many things in place that took it to the podcast. So I feel like probably the best way to go about this is start off with like school life and whatnot. So school life, done well. Actually, let's pass to school life. I think the best way to start this is basically saying that I had jobs before, you know, Carrefour Warehouse, Virgin, Lifeguard, JD, you name it. I've done several jobs. And then BT came about, and what was the question again? Why a podcast?
Was there anything significant for you to start a podcast?
It was never intended to be a podcast that would be a full-time sort of thing. It was an intention of, I'm going to start CEOCAST. And once I find the business that I found from CEOCAST, because I'm interviewing CEOs, my ethos was that I want to find the business that I want to go into, whether it be a car wrapping shop or doing media production or doing something else tech related, whatever the case may be. I was like, I need to find my business, and once I found that business, I'm gonna bounce.
So basically, you thought you'd start a podcast, talk to business owners, find the right business, and once you found the right business from the right CEO, you thought you're gonna dabble into that field.
Exactly that.
Well then, look, you're sat here, mate. I'm guessing that never happened.
Nah, this became the full-time thing. That didn't ever happen.
So what? Do you still have that thought?
No, not anymore. Not at all.
So hold on, wait just a second. You're telling me you're the CEO of CEOCAST, and if you had a business opportunity come your way, you wouldn't dabble into it?
No, don't get me wrong. I'd snap it up and I'd take it 100%. You Yeah, and I'll start my own business eventually. But right now, my sole focus is on CEOCAST and taking it. Like, as I said, we're on 100k subscribers. In the YouTube world, that's nothing. When you think about it, that's actually nothing. Yeah. So I want to take it to 1 million, 10 million, 100 million. That will be my sole focus. I think for a long time coming in the future, my sole focus will be CEOCAST. Don't get me wrong, there will be umbrellas. There will be different branches to CEOCAST as we go in the future. But CEOCAST will be the main thing.
All right, so cut to the chase. You called your friend and you told him you're going to interview him, right?
Yeah.
So tell us, bro, what happened on the interview? How did you prepare for it? Your first ever interview.
Bro, that was the worst interview I've ever done in my life, if I'm looking back at it. And did we publish it? No. So I'll tell you how it started, yeah. So I was always an introvert, and I still am to some extent. And I never ever wanted to be on camera, right? So I thought, there's only one way to do this. I'm not going to be on camera. The camera's going to be on you. And that is it. Do you know what I mean?
So hold on. You wanted to do a podcast and you didn't want to be on camera.
Yeah. So I was never going to be on camera. That was my intention. I was never ever going to be on camera. But then we watched it back, yeah. It was like, how can I look at, not in a rude way, but how can we look at your face for an hour? You lose your audience retention. I've lost interest after 5 minutes because all I'm seeing is the same thing over and over again for full an hour. So then we watched it back, like 3 other boys, and we were like, nah, the only way this is actually going to work is if I'm on camera. And I never wanted to take that step because, like I said, I've never been on camera before. I've never been on social media before. Nothing like that. Obviously, I had social media, but only like 100 followers from my schoolboys and some people that I knew and whatnot. But I never wanted to be on camera like that. So I was just like, let's just take a leap of faith. Let me get out of my comfort zone and jump on camera. And that's exactly what I've done.
So what did you do with that podcast? You never released it?
No, that podcast wasn't released. The first one wasn't released. Then we refilmed when I was on camera.
Yeah.
And that was still the worst podcast I've ever recorded.
So then how did you combat that fear of you being scared from the first one? Now you had to record the second one. How'd you do that?
Because I was like, there's only one way this is going to be done if I keep doing it. You know, and then eventually I'll build into character and I'll get it done. And at first I thought I had to be so professional and talk like with Queen's English and everything like that and make it work. But I was like, no, I'm not, that's not my background. That's not where I'm from. I don't come from central London where they talk like that. I come from, the ends essentially. So then I slowly transitioned to being myself and being to who I actually am, how I talk to my boys.
So who'd you do the second podcast with?
Second podcast was with a chap named Alex, AWC Detailing in Southend.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you kept waking me up in the morning trying to make me drop you there. Nah, mate. All right, so Alex, AWC, first ever podcast you've done with someone that you don't know. How did you prepare for that? Because that must have been a lot more daunting than doing a podcast with someone that you know. I've done some research into him, looked into his company, looked what he's about. He was a young guy. He still is young, to be fair. Yeah.
But I believe he was 20 or 21 at the time. So still, like young entrepreneur. And I looked up to him because at the time I was 22, so he was 2 years younger than me and he was smashing it. He had his own unit, detailing bay, PPF, the whole lot. So I've done as much research as I can. And do you know what? At the start of CEOCAST, it wasn't so much about your story. It was about how do you run a business. So It was literally me asking you your whole business plan. But then as time went on, I realized no one's going to give away their business plan.
So how many subscribers did you have at the time when you went to go and interview him?
1.
So what was your strategy to get him on the podcast? I mean, it's your first ever podcast. You've had to reach out to someone. What was your strategy to try and get him on? How did you convince Alex to come on the podcast?
I think, do you know what? I tried so hard to get many, many people on the podcast here through emailing them, DMing them. If I show you the emails I sent back then, I think I remember showing you as well. I sent paragraphs in the emails saying, this is who I am. This is what I want to do. This is what I aspire to be, everything. Can you come on a podcast? I think I've done that so many times. And I think Alex saw that email and must have thought, let me give him a shot. He knew my channel was, dead at the time. It had just started out. I think I made that clear in the email as well. I'll try and pull up a screenshot of it or something. And he just, he gave me a leap of faith to say, come down, come do this interview.
So first big major podcast in your eyes. How did you feel when the camera started rolling?
I was nervous because bear in mind, that was the first ever podcast I've done where I didn't know him. I met him on the day of doing that podcast and that was so nerve wracking. As I said, I'm an introvert, so I never really do that. I never really go out of my box to go and introduce myself to other people. But that was the first time I ever had to do that. And that was the most nerve wracking thing ever. And I think you can see that in the podcast.
So after that podcast, did you feel like you're going to quit your job? Because me and you both know why you started this podcast. Maybe we should tell everyone else.
Do you know what? It's a deep one. I don't want to get too down about it, but see the podcast, the reason why I started is because I felt like I was so lost and at a low point in my life, especially with certain things that had happened within the previous years to that, and I was just like a lost soul sort of thing. So I was like, I need to find some purpose. I need to find myself. And that's how the podcast was born. And just like, I don't know, should we touch on it a bit? Obviously, you know the situation.
Yeah, I think we should touch on it a little bit.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, how should we introduce it? Go on.
Look, Raheem, let's cut the chase. Let's cut the crap like your good friend Trist would say, yeah? You're on the podcast always talking about how other people make money. I want to know, I already know, but I want the audience to know how you started making money.
Okay, so we're diving into that back, yeah?
Yeah, we're going that
All
back.
right, cool. So I remember when we were in sixth form, we both went to different schools.
Yeah, that's right.
So when I was in sixth form, you remember this, I had a lifeguarding job.
Yeah,
And I remember my shift was 6:45 to 2 p.m, I believe. Something like that, if I can remember. So that was my first ever job, being a lifeguard. Done a lifeguard course, qualification, all that. My mum told me to do it.
Was that actually the first point where you started making money?
Yeah, that was the first time. Obviously, that was the job, but I was like, still some sort of money.
Any side hustles at that time?
Nah, nothing at that point, no.
Was you thinking of any side hustles at the
No,
time?
I wasn't thinking of no side hustles, nothing at the time.
So mum made you do a lifeguarding course while I went to go and do an ACCA.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I suppose I wasn't the clever twin, was I?
Yeah, I hear that, but there must be more to it.
I think mum just wanted to make me work. You know, mum was always telling me to get out of the house and do something and go and work. So I think she's the one who signed me up to the lifeguard qualification, said, you're going to go and get a lifeguarding job. And it was in Barkingside. So, no, it wasn't. Yeah, the qualification was in Barkingside and I started working in Ilford, Nuffield, I believe, yeah.
I got to give credit to you because that was the greatest time of my life when I was able to get a free gym membership. And I know you only worked there for a short period of time. So where did you go after that?
Look, after that, we'll get into the jobs. I had JD and a few that, but I think the biggest job and the biggest, like, where I started making good money was Carphone Warehouse. And I was there for almost 3 years, I want to say, something like that. And that was probably the best job I had in terms of the people that I was working with, the actual job itself, sales. I think I've always been a sales guy at heart and in my head. I think I can sell ice to an Eskimo sort of thing. No, that's an easy thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, you idiot. But what was that, full-time job?
At that time, we were both in uni, so that was a part-time job. But then, as you know, I quit uni and you were the only one that knew about it.
You
at the
quit
time.
uni while I was still there.
You know, I went to uni to mum and dad, but I was going to Carphone Warehouse. So it went from 2 days a week part-time, as what they know of, to now 5 days a week, 6 days a week. But they still think I'm doing two days a week. Do you get what I'm saying? And obviously you know that. So you saw the bread that I was bringing home and you were like, yo, Raheem, I need to drop out of uni.
Yeah, I
as
remember
well.
you telling me and I told you got to give me a certain percentage of your earnings, otherwise I'm going to go tell mum and dad.
No, but you know what? Yeah, Carphone Warehouse was brilliant. It built up my self-confidence and my sales skills and just me as a person, I would say, because I had to force myself to go to other people and whatnot and do something and try and make a sale, obviously, because obviously Carphone Warehouse was heavily commission-based. So it was like you can either bring you're just a wage home, which is like, so let's just say £1,000 a month, or you can bring home £2,000. That's with your wage and commission, obviously. So it forced you to kind of get yourself out there and get the sale and get the job done. And that's when I started kind of learning how to make more money than not the normal, but it was still a job, don't get me wrong, but it was like you had to do above and beyond to make more money.
But this is still way back in like 2017. So did you actually have the thought of the podcast then?
No, this is back in 2000. I think I got the job in 2017. So this is way back then.
So then what was after that?
After that, okay, so I'll give you a little story. And this is when, you know, I went into car rentals with my mate. So at the time, my mate Kasim from Chauffeur Ride, he was doing self-drive hire. And we went for breakfast one time and the idea just popped in both our heads. He was like, yo, why don't you buy a car and put it on the fleet, make more money? And I was like, what? So you're telling me I can get the car that I want and make money from it so I don't have to pay for the monthlies?
Living the dream.
Living the dream, exactly that. So I was like, yeah, let me do it. And then that's when...
so you gave thumbs up to the idea?
Yeah. There and then. I was like, this is sick. I don't know why I didn't think of that.
So at that point, you had enough money, and I know you borrowed some from me as well, to go and buy yourself a brand new car.
Yeah. Put the deposit down, yeah. Not because the car I bought was Audi S5.
And was that all from Carphone Warehouse?
Yeah, that was from Carphone Warehouse, lifeguarding job. I was very good at stacking money. You know that as well, you know, because I always had more money than you. You were the stupid one with money.
Unfortunately.
You know, buying designer stuff and all of that. Yeah, it was a bit mad. But anyway, I was always a good one at saving money. And so... I saved the money, put the deposit down, then I started paying monthly installments for the car.
How much was that monthly?
£400 a month, roughly.
And how much was insurance?
Insurance was, that's a sticky situation. That was £2,000.
So how much did you actually need to break even on that investment?
Well, if you look at it in theory, about £600, £700 a month just to break even on the car. So like your monthly paid for and then anything else is like your...
So you strongly believe at 19 years old, you would make enough money from this car to pay off this car every single month?
Yeah, and I was still working in Carphone Warehouse. So my ethos, but you know the problem was with me then? I didn't look at it like a business. I wasn't in it for the profit. I was like, I can have the car that I want
for free.
But the issue is the car was out. So the car was never in my possession anyway. So it was kind of like a dumb, it was stupid.
All right, so talk to me about that process. You've got the car now. What was the point where you started making money from it?
So yeah, we put it on the fleet. Me and Kasim put it on the fleet and it started going out on rent and stuff like that. And it was doing good, to be fair, for a couple of months. And then unfortunately, as I said, the car was out, no service history. Next thing you know, there was a problem with the gearbox malfunction. Took it to Audi. took it to Aldi because the car had warranty. They took the gearbox apart and said there's metal filings in the gearbox. Yeah, and you being into cars as well, you know exactly what that means.
Yeah, I know exactly what that
Gearbox
means.
is finished. Khalas, so they said they need a new gearbox. So thankfully, they obviously it's under warranty. They're giving a new gearbox with it. But the issue was they had the car for 2 months trying to put a new gearbox in it, which I don't know why it took them 2 months in the first place.
So you were down bad.
1,200 quid roughly. Yeah, 1,200 quid coming out.
And then how did you pay off the car in the end?
Well, I was still working in car from warehouse, so everything I was earning in car from warehouse was going straight to the car. Do you know what it was? I thought I was doing well in life. Yeah, I thought I was some mad entrepreneur. So I started, going out with my mates, paying for meals, doing this, doing that, whatever. And by the time the end of the month, I had spent quite a bit of that money. So it wasn't so much a profit. Like there was no profit in that. So by the time what happened to the car, which I'm sure we'll get into, there was no money to get the situation sorted.
What did you do when the car came back?
Car came back, put it on rent, and then a month later down the line, someone took it for hire for the week. 3 days into him hiring it, I saw on the tracker that the car weren't moving no more. Yeah, and the car was just like, the guy hadn't driven it for 3 days. So I think he took it on a Monday, and then by Friday, the car was still parked up on Wednesday. So I was thinking, who hires a car and leaves it parked up? That don't make no sense. There's something fishy about this. So I said to my mate Kasim, I was like, listen, let's go to central London and let's see. But this is where the car was, obviously.
Let's go spy on the car, basically.
Let's go spy on the car, basically, yeah. Without him knowing that we're there. Anyway, so I had a gut feeling about this anyway. We got there and next thing you know, I see the car in the middle of a lamppost.
At that moment, how did you feel?
Bro, my heart shattered. My heart actually shattered because, that car was not... to me, it was like, that was such a loss because I knew straight away I didn't have enough money to fix it. I knew there and then I didn't have enough money to fix it.
And everyone always talks about this, before you jumped into that business, we even had this conversation as well. There's too much risk to reward ratio. Did you realize that then?
My heart was in, the second I saw the car, my heart weren't in it anymore. Like, it was crazy because you got to bear in mind. So we'll get when it comes to collecting this car and everything, we put it in the back of a tow truck, taking it to a garage, and it turns out there was about 8 to 10 grand worth of damage. It was heavy damage, bro. It was a whole full front end.
So it's pretty much a full-on write-off.
Yeah, it was mad, man. That was such a dark time, and because that shattered me and broke me down for months on end. Like, because just thinking about it, this car was sat there. I had monthly bills going out. From thinking that you're making some money and you're living a good life to now your whole life's gone to shit basically because of this car. And there's nothing to say bad about the business. I got no bad words to say about Kasim or anything like that. He run it all properly. It was just the issue was,
the risk was too high.
The risk was too high, and that's why not a lot of people do self-driving now. And people who do it, credit to them. I don't know how they're doing it.
So would you ever go back to that business?
Never again. And my mate Kasim, he doesn't do self-drive anymore either, purely because of the headache from that business as well. So I don't think
obviously it's in his name, isn't it? Chauffeur ride.
Chauffeur ride, yeah. So he just does straight limos and he's got jet classes now. He's smashing it in his own right just with the chauffeur side. But we both decided at that point, look, self-drive is not worth it anymore.
So that's interesting. Your first ever business was a complete and utter failure.
Well, yeah, you want to put it like that? Thank you very much.
It's just got to be said, bro. But now, look, Raheem, let's get serious. How did you overcome that dark time? Because I remember that. I want to know how you overcome that.
I'll be real, man. I didn't really overcome that time. It was only I just had to distract myself with more jobs. So I had left Carphone Warehouse, then I joined Virgin, and then I was still in uni a bit. And then, no, I wasn't in uni. That makes sense, yeah. And then, I just had to get jobs. And I don't know, it was just over a period of time where I was just like, look, you can't stop bitching around and just thinking that your life's the end. You got more to life. You're only 21 years old at the time. There's more to life. And so I think over 4 or 5 months, that's when it started to kick in. And I was like, I need to get back on my feet sort of thing.
So you're in a dark stage in your life. You're bouncing from job to job. Was it a progression or?
Well, that's when I wasn't in uni anymore. So I was like, okay, maybe uni's not the route. By the time mum and dad had found out, I wasn't in uni. So they were like, okay, cool, do something else, get an apprenticeship. So I was like, all right, cool, safe, I'll get an apprenticeship. So then got an apprenticeship at BT. And this is when the BT story starts, Got the apprenticeship in BT. And then once again, I was there for a few months, didn't learn anything, wasn't interested. They didn't bother to teach us anything. It was the worst apprenticeship you could ever think of.
How much were they paying you?
Bro, it was £800-900 a month.
And looking back at the previous months or years, that was probably a lot for you.
No, it was nothing.
How old was you then?
I started the apprenticeship when I was 22.
Yeah. I remember
it was 2019. September 2019, yeah. So again, when I say CEOCAST came from a dark place and a lost place, after all of that had happened and me getting this job at BT and realizing this still isn't it, I was very lost in life. I didn't know where I was going, what I was doing, and I was scared because I've always wanted a business. I've always wanted to be wealthy, have the supercars, have this and that. And BT was never going to pay me that. Even if you had finished apprenticeship, the maximum they're going to pay you on a salary is 40 grand. So I was like, this is never ever going to get what I want in life. And so I was really lost and just trying to find out what can I actually do. And so when I say CEOCAST is born from a lost place, it literally was. Do you know what I'm saying? I was trying to find myself. And I'm sure we'll talk about this later on in the podcast, but this is the reason why I love doing what I do, because when you see people messaging you saying that CEOCAST inspires them and it helps them and motivates them, they start the business off the back of CEOCAST, they do all of this and all of that, I feel relatable because that was me when I started CEOCAST. And I feel like, yeah, the money from CEOCAST is good, which I'm sure we'll get on to and stuff, but the best feeling and the most satisfying feeling is knowing that the people watching it are actually taking it for inspiration and it's changing people's lives.
Yeah, because you even mentioned to me, that someone came up to you at an event.
Bro, that was, literally, I was at my boy's Trist's event the other day, and shout out to Daryl if he's watching this, but, he came up to me and he was like, your podcast got me through my darkest days and got me to where I am. And when he said that, I was like, I've seen it on DMs before, people say that, and it hits you on DMs, but when you say that in real life, that hits you on another level, man.
Yeah, bro, man, honestly, I can imagine.
Like the fuel it adds to want you to drive and do so well. And it's crazy because it's got nothing to do with financial gain at all, but it's more about making an impact on people's lives.
Yeah.
So when he said that hit me differently, man.
So basically, to summarize to this point, overall, you've been fired from every job, every business you've tried has failed. What did you do to get forward and pass that point?
This is why I wanted to do the podcast with my brother, because only he can say stuff like that.
So then tell me then, how'd you go forward from there? Because I'm guessing your YouTube weren't monetized then, right?
No, it weren't monetized, and I didn't leave BT. I got fired from BT.
So then, bro, tell us, because this ain't making sense. How was you eating? How was you surviving?
I wasn't. But luckily, fortunately, how you want to look at it, lockdown was there. So, living with mum and dad, we didn't have rent to pay or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I didn't have no income coming in, but then I didn't have no expenses going out because no one was going out. There's no car on my head anymore. The finance was paid off. There was nothing to really worry about like that.
So you're breaking even for a short period?
Yeah. I was the money I was spending was all my savings. And it was only Amazon purchases and stuff just to get through lockdown out of boredom.
Look, Raheem, this is such a random question, but you barely had any money saved up. I know that. So I want to know what your Amazon purchase was like.
All right, CEOCAST equipment. So the cameras, the light, no, I didn't buy lighting, the microphones and cameras. That's the first thing I bought. That's the first heavy investment that I put into myself.
So was that before or after your first podcast?
That was after the first podcast. That was probably the fourth podcast in.
Fourth?
Yeah. So I wasn't making any money, but I was like, yeah, this is going to work. And I had full of self-belief. So I was like, let me spend some money and back myself here. So I think the equipment at the time cost about 1,500 quid.
So I'm guessing then your self-belief went through the roof after your fourth podcast.
I knew it was going to work. Yeah, I knew it was going to work. 100%.
Why? How did you know it was going to work?
Because there was no podcast showcasing business and entrepreneurship. And that's what I was doing.
In the world, in the UK, where are we talking?
I want to say the world, but I don't know about the world. But as far as I was looking, UK, as I was in BT, I was watching podcasts and whatnot, and I couldn't find a podcast that focused on business entrepreneurship and different routes to take in life.
In the UK?
In the UK, at least. I don't know about the world, but, UK at least.
So you're telling me there was no one in the UK that you could have taken inspiration from at the time?
In terms of that category of podcast, no. There was podcasts that took inspiration from. For example, I liked the likes of Freshly Grounded or True Geordie. I like their whole production setup, and that's why I invested heavy into the equipment. But in terms of conversation and the guests they're getting on, there was not really many people that I could take inspiration from. So I'd done this all in my own head sort of thing. And it's not in an ego way, but it's generally me saying it.
So after you invested all this money into the podcast, did you feel like you had now upped the standard and the level of CEOCAST and you had to really think about who to get on and where to film and all that sort of stuff?
No, it was never like that, because it was still building blocks, still building journey, right? So, in lockdown had come, I started doing podcasts on Zoom. So done that for a bit and I hated it because the Zoom quality was dead, but I was still getting anyone on the podcast.
Okay, so how were you actually preparing for the podcast? Were you writing script, writing questions?
Yeah, in the beginning I was writing scripts and doing heavy research into the guests. I still do that today, to be fair. Not the scripts, but I still do heavy research into the guests. But yeah, I was getting anyone on the podcast really. Anyone who approached me saying, yeah, let's do a podcast. I was like, yeah, let's do it. Because at the end of the day, it was an extra episode. It was, you joker, you just vape straight into the camera. Vape that way. Yeah, it was extra podcasts, extra content, and more episodes. Yeah, and I knew from day one it was all about consistency, hard work, and making sure that I meet every Sunday 7 p.m. I set in my head Sunday 7 p.m. every single time, so I make sure I never miss that.
So how did you manage to stay consistent and motivated in your darkest times? Because sometimes you can get lazy, sometimes you don't feel like eating, sometimes you feel like absolute crap and you don't want to get out of bed.
I had no backup option, so it was either CEOCAST or nothing, or going back to being a bum. So for me, in my head,
But even then, bro, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's no reward there. So how do you actually stay on that path?
I just didn't want to work again, man. I wanted to always work for myself. And I was like, this is now or never. And if I go back on myself, I'm just going to feel like I'm going back in life. And there's nothing wrong with working a 9 to 5, but I feel like some people are cut out to do more. And I don't know how to make this sound.
But it must have been a specific thing at that point where it was driving you further, thinking, you know what, yeah, I can do this.
Just my determination, self-belief.
What, so it wasn't like your YouTube things like views,
the views,
or
I wasn't getting
subscribers
no
or
views
anything
or
like that?
subscribers, nothing like that. You got to bear in mind, by the time I had done my like 20th episode or something like that, I was still on 500 subscribers. I was still under 1,000 mark.
Which is not bad, to be fair. I mean, look, 500 is 500 subscribers. It's better than 0, isn't it? So it still give you some sort of motivation.
Yeah, of course it did. Because I was like, yeah, it's building, it's picking up. It was nowhere near I wanted it to be, but I was like, yeah, the second I hit 1,000 subscribers, I knew the criteria of how you get monetized and whatnot. So I was like, eventually this will pay off somehow.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? So the determination, the hustle was there.
And how long were you willing to show up and be consistent every single week?
Bro, the quitting has never been in my head. I was willing to show up every single week, making sure I'm sharp and I'm on point.
So if you had the podcast for, let's just say, 2 years consistently and you weren't growing, you'd still be doing it?
I'll still be doing it. If someone took all the monetization sponsors away right now, I'll still be doing CEOCAST because the impact that it leaves on people. This is why I feel like the podcast was made for the people. Do you know what I mean? Like it's had a heavy impact on people and their lives.
So tell me, let's get straight to the point. Which video made you feel like you're going clear? Like, it's done.
My brother Mikey. I got to give a shout out to Mikey. You know, I've done a podcast with him and I've done a podcast with him already. So the story of how we met will be on his channel, but done a podcast with him. And before that, previous to that, each podcast was probably getting about 500 views at the time in a week, maybe, if that. I done Mikey's one. In the first week, it hit 10,000 views. And I was absolutely blown away.
And who is Mikey for those people that don't know?
He's the owner of Melon Chigwell restaurant, but he's also mainly now my brother, pretty much.
And at that point, obviously, I know he's got his podcast now, you know, shout out the Blue Tick Show. But was he blowing up then? Was he big then? What was the case like?
Nah, he had like 7,000 followers on Instagram. So he was known in the area, known in the community, but he wasn't like a big time celebrity or anything like that. I mean, in my head at the time, he was, because he was big, like Melon was big sort of thing. And so I done a podcast with him and things changed from there and then. Like it made me take over 1,000 subscribers, made me get monetized. And then from there, it was onwards and upwards because I've done a few more episodes after that. And then Mikey knew Aleem through his restaurant launch. So Mikey messaged Aleem for me, which I rate him for and I appreciate him for. And then after nagging Aleem for a few months and, you know, annoying him, which, you know, he'd probably happily admit that I was probably annoying him.
You were being persistent.
I was being persistent with trying to get Aleem on the podcast. Eventually he was like, yeah, I remember one day after messaging him so many times, he just messaged me in the morning. He was like, can you be here for 11 a.m.? It was 9 a.m. at that time. I literally, luckily for some reason, whatever reason it was, yeah, my cameras and everything were charged and they were ready to go.
It was meant to be.
It was meant to be. So I got out of bed, stuck a shirt on there and then, didn't have a trim, which is why if you watch that podcast back, I didn't have no trim or anything like that. And I jumped in my car, went straight to Birmingham and landed at his pet showroom and things changed from there, man.
I can't remember, but was there any podcast in between or was it straight after Mikey's one?
No. There was like 3 podcasts in between Aleem's and Mikey's.
So now you got Aleem on the podcast. Big Aleem, who we've both been following for a while. Like, how did you feel then?
I was bricks, bro, because this is now Lord Aleem on the podcast. Yeah. I know him very well today. He's my brother today. But back then, I didn't know him at all. So to me, in my eyes, he's you know, a stranger who's got hundreds and thousands of followers and people know him from all over the UK. And now they're going to watch this podcast, this small little podcast with one of the biggest guests on at the time on CEOCAST. That was the most nerve-wracking feeling ever.
So you had 2 hours to prepare for that podcast, and those 2 hours from London to Birmingham all consisted of driving. So
yeah.
So one of the biggest guests you would have had at the time, how did you prepare for him?
Well, luckily I picked up one of my cousins, and we went straight to Aleem. And luckily, because I know Aleem, like, you know, off the back of looking at his socials and, you know, growing up looking at his YouTube channel and whatnot, I knew who he was and what he does. So all the questions were in my head anyway and exactly what I wanted to ask him. So I just said to my cousins as we're driving up, I'm saying questions, he's writing them down, sort of thing. So I had everything. We were prepping in the car on the way up.
So that day you're pretty much just answering your own curiosity rather than actually podcasting him.
Yeah.
Well, how'd it go?
At the time, it was wicked. Yeah, it was the best feeling ever. I'd come out, you know, I remember I put the picture up of me and Aleem on Instagram, getting likes after likes. I remember I kept opening my phone, gained another 30 followers each single time I was opening my phone. It was such a sick feeling. When I look back at it now, and me and Aleem have spoken about this, I can't watch that podcast back because I'm so fanboyish in that podcast. I'm so new to the whole podcasting game. I just cringe at it. I cringe at myself. Do you know what I'm saying? I can't watch that podcast back, and I've said that to him many times, which is why I said to him, we need to do a part 2, because I need to have a better image on the podcast. You know what I mean? So after you got Liam on the podcast, did you see any significant differences in terms of like who you could get on the podcast proposals, reaching out to people? Yeah. After that, it was a big change, because after that podcast, it was monumental growth from there onwards upwards, because that podcast, I don't know what it done in a week. I want to say it maybe done 15,000 overnight, pretty much, which was flipping massive. Absolutely game changing, yeah. From 10,000 in a week with Mikey's to now 15,000 overnight. That was mad. But then it opened the doors to so many other people. I think it done 100,000 within the first month. And then, you know, the guests and the caliber of guests just kept going up and up and up. So let's be real. After you had a guest like Liam, did you have any thought of your head of like, you know what, I've got a standard now? Going forward in the future, which I'm sure we'll get into as well, there are things that I'm going to do to implement people, you know, up and coming entrepreneurs, the smaller entrepreneurs, the people who need that exposure, and give that push to them, because I do want to help people on their journey. I do want to make sure that they get seen in the limelight for their incredible work, the entrepreneurship that they do in their journey. And there's going to be a separate whole thing coming for that in the future, 100%. I never ever wanted it to be like, I have to up the next guest and it's always going to be celebrities, because it was always about the community entrepreneurs. Do you know what I'm saying? So I'm going to make sure that comes back. Yeah, and I think we were speaking about it earlier at home, where, you know, you're going to have a different route in terms of CEOCAST and where it goes, and having events where those people can kind of showcase exactly what they do. Let's fast forward a couple of years, because one of the biggest podcasts you ever done was with Andrew Tate, yeah? I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass, but well done, bro. That was absolutely unreal how you managed to get him on. Yeah, I remember when I told you about this. Yeah, bro, I thought you were trolling me at first when you told me. Like, I've seen him on TikTok all the time. Next thing you know, my brother's telling me that he's going to get Andrew Tate on the podcast. I'm thinking this is ultimate cap. And I've never really actually sat down and asked you the question, but how did you actually get the top G on the podcast? Because he was he probably still is, the most famous man on the internet. Bro, so at the time, he wasn't the most famous man. Yeah, he is now, don't get me wrong. But at the time, he had like 200,000 followers on Instagram, which is still a lot, but it wasn't like 4.1 million, which is what he had by the time I had done that podcast, yeah? So I was like, you know, let me just shoot my shot. Everyone's saying Andrew Tate, yeah? And I was like, all right, cool. I know who he is, but I didn't know how big it would be for the platform. So then I just shot a shot, man. I just emailed him. I literally found his email and I just sent him an email saying, hey, bro, you know, got this podcast, would love to do a podcast with you, etc. He replied 3 hours later saying, and this was, by the way, I emailed him at 3 a.m. He replied at 6 a.m. saying, yep, just send me your channel over, send me the stats and we can get it done. I remember when I emailed him, I didn't sleep. And I remember I was probably pissing you off all night as well, because I didn't sleep at all. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. And then so, yeah, he replied at 6 a.m. saying, yeah, send your stats, everything. So I sent him a couple of the podcasts. I sent him the Liam one that I'd done in the time. I sent Chronos one and I sent the channel. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. I was like, oh my God, Andrew Tate confirmed for the podcast. And I remember waking you up, yeah, because you were about to go to sleep. I remember waking you up saying, yo, listen, Khalid, Andrew Tate is coming on the podcast right now. It's mad. And so I was going to initially fly to Romania for that podcast, but seeing that he bounces around so many times, it was just like, when is it going to actually happen sort of thing. And then just so happens that I was on Instagram one day. This is like a week after that whole email conversation, yeah? Hold on, wait. Before you got him on the podcast, what was the most extreme thing you were willing to do to get him on the podcast? Because I remember you were throwing out all sorts of ideas to me. As I said, I was going to fly to Romania. I was going to fly anywhere in the world to meet his requirements and make it easiest for him. Because I know that he bounces around from location to location, country to country. I was going to go to whichever country he was in. So what would you do if he sent you some coordinates and it's the middle of nowhere? Bro, you know I would have gone. That's the reason why my whole podcast is portable. I can do it in a forest if I wanted to. And is that one of the reasons why you haven't got your studio yet? Yeah, because I do like the portability factor and being able to go anywhere. Because I feel like the other half of it is you get to showcase someone's business in their environment and do a podcast in their environment. And it makes it easier for the entrepreneur, because you got to think about busy people, you know, might not have the time of day to come to London and do a podcast there. Everyone's busy. Do you know what I'm saying? So I make it the easiest I can for the guests by going to their locations, so they don't have to take too much out of their time of their busy day to do this podcast. But let's be real, look, a lot of your competitors have big studios, big sets, big boy productions. Do you feel like you're at a disadvantage? You know, I've been going through this question recently of whether I need a studio or not. And there's definitely, it's a double-edged sword, because it definitely will take the production to the next level and set a standard and set the bar for CEOCAST. But at the same time, I feel like the whole podcast was built on the USP of me traveling, and every single podcast you watch is always in a different location. And it looks sick because no two podcasts are ever the same. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah, true say. I agree with that. Like, but yeah, going back to Andrew Tate, yeah, he said, you know, we'll do it in Romania. So I was like, yeah, cool, we'll do it there. And then a week later from that email conversation, I saw Snapchat. Remember you were with me? and not Snapchat, Instagram story, and he was on the M40 in the UK. And we know what the M40 looks like because everyone knows that motorway is notorious for, no cameras. Everyone knows what the M40 looks like.
Mexico City,
exactly that. Yeah. So I was like, oh, I was like, yo, M40, he's in the UK right now. So I emailed him again. I was like, yo, listen, I see you're in the UK. Do you want to do it like while you're here? He's like, cool, let's do it tomorrow. This was at like 6 p.m. at night. Yeah. And I was like, how the hell am I going to do this? I ain't got a location. I ain't got anything. I ain't got trim. I ain't got nothing like that. So that was the most stressful point of CEOCAST, to organize a location. I know it sounds like something like first world problem, but I have to get my trim sorted. Yeah. I had to get so many different things sorted within about a 4-hour period to send him saying, this is where we're doing the podcast, this time, etc. Make sure you turn up. So I didn't say make sure you turn up to Andrew Tate. That would have been a bit mad. But he turned up, credit to him, I got everything sorted. Shout out to SW Lounge because they hosted us there. We were on very short notice. Shout out to my barber because he came to my yard to cut my hair. And that was crazy, man. Everyone always asks me and you because everyone thinks that I'm you. They always ask, how's the top G in person? So how was he? He's a sick guy, man. You were there as well. And
I know, but I'm just asking you for the viewer's sake.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, but he's just a normal guy. Like, online, he's just his character of being the top G, which he is still a G, don't get me wrong, but he's still very chilled out. You can have a conversation with him all day long about anything. He talks exactly like how we're talking right now. Very intellectual guy. He's a sick guy, man. He's not just what everyone claims to be, this guy online who's a misogynist and this and that, whatever crap people are feeding into, the media are feeding into him about him. I feel a lot of dislikes coming in the comments right now. Yeah, but what can I say? I've met the guy. I can only judge someone for meeting them. How can you judge someone for their online persona? You can't. You have to meet someone. Someone might be a total asshole online, but then you meet them and they're completely different. They're like, just normal.
Would you say you're different how you are in real life and how you are on the podcast?
That's a very good question. That is a very great question. And this is why I want to do the podcast with you. Do you know what? Am I different? I'd like to say I'm not. I'd like to say if people meet me, they know Raheem, the same Raheem as they see on camera. My mates might say that's cap because you know what? You know when you're around different people, you might with your bunch of boys, whatever, and you act different with them, and you might be around professional people and you act different, you act professional. But I feel like I can adjust to any sort of environment, any person that I'm around. So in hindsight, yes, I would like to say that people do get the same Raheem. I'll always show people love. If they come up to me in person, I'll always show people love and give them the most time of day that I can. It's always them. It's always the other person, like the someone coming up to me in person. It's always them to say, all right, cool, I'll see you a lot later. It's not like I've deaded them off and said, all right, safe now, I've seen you, bye. It's always been them like, oh, great to meet you, Raheem. Have a nice day, that sort of thing. So I've always given that time of day to the point where they were like, all right, piss off now.
And what about all the other CEOs that you've interviewed? What about them? Do you feel like they're a different person in real life and on social media?
Do you know what? A lot of these CEOs that I've had on the podcast, you don't really get to hear their personal side of the story. Do you know what I'm saying? You don't really get to see their personality shine.
Yeah, so that's why I'm asking you. Like, do you think people who show stuff online, they're not really like that?
Someone like Reese O'Barra, for example. He's a legend online and he's a legend in person. He shows love. Yeah, and he's a sick guy. I have nothing bad to say about him. He's like how you'd expect him to be in person, but he's chilled out, but super clued on at the same time. But that's how he is on social media as well, I'd like to say.
So how many times do you actually like fly out to do a podcast or go somewhere else or do something crazy where you just got to go and do a podcast?
I'll only fly out when I need to fly out, as in like, if there's a podcast. If I have Elon Musk in America, if he messages me tomorrow saying, come do a podcast, you think I'm not going to fly out? Of course I'm going to go. If I've had Mo Vlogs and Money Kick saying, yo, come to do a podcast, I'm going to go to Dubai. So that's why I'll go to Dubai. Soon, maybe when this podcast is out, I might be in Germany to do a special podcast there. I don't even think I've told you this one. I'm not going to tell you either. But I've got a mad podcast. Anyway, I'm going to Germany for that one. So I'll go out into different cities when it's necessary and when I know this is a step up, it's a level up. You know what I'm saying? I'm always trying to break the barrier, always trying to break levels of CEOCAST and what I can do.
So you mentioned that you're the only one in the team. Is it still like that right now?
In terms of me going to recording that, yeah, it's still me. However, I've got a great team behind me. You got people from the likes of, all my boys, for example. You got Shoaib Gori, you got Hasib Gori, you got my editor Asfan, you got people like Huzaifa. There's a bunch of people, right? And it's not so much that they edit for CEOCAST or anything like that, but I think with the mindset and everything that they have, we always come together in the office where we are filming right now, of course. And, we all bounce off each other and innovate different ideas, whether it be for their businesses or whether it be for CEOcast. They'll be like, look, you need to do this or you need to do that. And I'll be like to them, I'm almost like their content guide in that sense, yeah, because I know content off the back of my hand now. So I'll be like, no, you need to do this. We bounce off each other. So I'd say like that's the team. Like all of our mindsets combined help us elevate in many, many different ways. And I think that's the beauty of having, when people say, you know, you need to have a great team behind you, I think people automatically assume of you got to have people who you employ be part of that team. But I think to go one step further, it's definitely people, you got to surround yourself with the right-minded people and then you really truly elevate, because your brain can only think so far by yourself. When you got brains of other people, like 10 different individuals, the sky's the limit sort of thing. You can go so far, and I've come up with many ideas, or should I say the people I've just mentioned have come up with many different ideas that I've taken on board, and you know, it's been implemented in CEOcast, and people might not notice their ideas. I notice their ideas and I give them credit for that and I thank them for that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where people need a great team. You need to be surrounded by great people to help you elevate in life. And other than your team, has there been any podcast that actually changed you, that you've come out and you felt like a different man? So I'll be honest with you.
Well, yeah.
From before CEOcast Raheem and CEOcast Raheem now, during CEOcast, I feel like they're two completely different people. So I'd say, to answer your question, I think the whole of CEOcast, every single guest has changed me as a person. So you've just been progressively growing. Where do you go now? What's your plans?
Yeah.
And also, what's your relationship like with the guests you have on the podcast? You know, like you can do a podcast. Are you friends with them? Yeah, all of them. Many of them. Like literally, if I need something from a guest, yeah, let's just say I've done a podcast with a guest. I'll give you Shoaib, for example, yeah. Anytime, like, and I probably annoy him with it as well, yeah, but anytime I haven't got a location sorted for a podcast and I need a location, I'll just message or call Shoaib and be like, yo, can I use your office, please? And he'll be like, yeah. So that's a great example of it, where I can, you know, essentially use something that they've got, or they allow me to borrow their location. Or sometimes one of the guests might have special cars, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I might, you know, have a wedding coming up and I'll be like, yo, can I use your car? And they'll be like, yeah. Or just general advice. I always call the guests that I've had on for a specific scenario that I need to get out of my head and I need advice for, sort of thing. Like, they're always helping with that. Do you know what I mean? And it goes a long way. And that's what I'm saying. When I say it's changed me as a person, it literally has, because I've met, don't forget, yes, CEOcast guests are there. There's about 105 now, 100 to 110, whatever the case may be. But I've met way more people, and I'm talking about tenfold people off camera of CEOcast. Half the people I know now are they know me from initially of being CEOcast, but they've become great friends. Like if we're looking at, you know, I'll give you an example. I've got mates in Birmingham, yeah, Faris, Akil, and all them guys there. They've never been on CEOcast, but I'm almost pretty much like best friends with them, and that spiraled from them obviously knowing what CEOcast is and whatnot. But you make connections all over, and this is the great thing about social media and putting yourself out there. I don't know why I didn't do it sooner. Because my connections could be even bigger now. So look, bro, I have to ask you something. Go on. You claim to be a CEO, but you're not the CEO of anything.
Like that, yeah?
Yeah, bro. No, I'll tell you what, yeah. That name was brought up on me. Because, you know, whenever I see someone on the street or something like that, or people come up to me, no one would ever call me by my first name, Raheem. No one would ever come up to me saying, yo, Raheem, what's good, man? How you doing? All that. It was always, probably like one or two people, maybe, yeah. But it was always like, yo, your CEOcast, yo, CEO, what you saying, CEO, blah, blah, blah. So I used to get annoyed at first, yeah, because I was like, no one actually knows my name. No one's referring to me. But yeah, at what point did the name CEO come about? Like, was it before the podcast, after the podcast, during the podcast? No, it was during the mid-podcast. Because I was getting like frustrated-ish that people weren't calling me by my first name. I was like, people aren't going to call me by my first name. Let me just embrace it. And so I say the public gave me the name sort of thing. So I was like, you know what? Let me just stick Mr. in front of what they say and call myself Mr. CEO.
But let's be honest, deep down you like that, don't you?
I like it now because now it has more substance, and now I get way more recognition and people say, yo, Mr. CEO. But you know what it is? We live in a day and age right now where, you know, everyone online is an entrepreneur or a CEO and they've got some professional brand going on.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you don't class yourself or put yourself in that category of entrepreneur or, you know, someone along them lines.
No. Because like I was just saying, you know, Instagram is full of it, you know, everyone claiming that they're entrepreneurs. And this is not me being negative, this is me being real. Yeah. Half the people you see online aren't entrepreneurs. They ain't got anything to the name or anything like that. They claim that they're the biggest entrepreneur and all that sort of stuff. And there's too much of a professional route So I thought, you know what, let me just cut all that. Let me cut the crap and let me just give them exactly who I am as a person. And when I say you get the same Raheem as you get online, it's because I don't portray myself to be any entrepreneur making X amount per year and have this Lambo and all this sort of stuff. I could easily very well do that, but I choose not to. I like to keep it real on social media, exactly how you would see me in person. Do you know what I mean? And I think, do you know what? It probably is a phase in my life right now where I'm choosing to do that and go down the unprofessional route, if you call it. But I feel like it works so much better and people get to see a real side of Raheem, as opposed to like, I could easily put a post up tomorrow saying, yeah, CEOCAST make X figures. If you want to join my freaking podcast course, pay me this amount. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just not that guy. I'd rather keep it real. But do you think professionalism is key when you're doing your podcast? Because, you know, you're doing podcasts and the guests don't know who you are. Yeah, but they see me, I'm professional on my podcasts. I'm talking about my own personal Instagram. My own personal Instagram isn't so professional. It's like I upload a picture and I might have a nice cheeky caption that goes along with it. It's not like, you know, a professional one where it's fully laid out and I got a whole team just for that Instagram. It's just me, and I'm just like to keep it real with myself and the people that follow me. And that's why I'll show you like what I get up to on a daily basis in my daily life, you know, bantering around with the boys, going out to eat here and there. How is your daily life, bro? Because obviously I've moved out of the hood now, so how is your daily life? Now that you hit 100,000, what do you actually do? Life is stressful, bro, because my life is on a cycle all the time. If I'm not doing a podcast, I'm in my room editing, as you would know. If I'm not in my room editing, I'm in a meeting. If I'm not in a meeting, I'm out doing something. Everything's all related to CEOCAST from the minute I wake up to the minute I sleep. Do you know what I mean? And there's not a time where I get some time off. The only time I really get off is probably a random day in the week when there's not much to do and I've done all the work that I can. I set myself ahead, so I work as much as I can throughout the week so I can have a bit of a chilled weekend. Apart from Sundays, those are the most stressful days ever because that's obviously when the podcast drops. Yeah, that's when they hear screaming from your bedroom. Yeah. Exactly that. But yeah, no, I don't really get much chill time. So on a daily basis, it pretty much looks the same. Of just literally. So basically, you've given up the 9 to 5 to work 24/7. Yeah, basically. Yeah. So what does the money look like? You want to know figures? Yeah, but I think let's start it like this. How much do you pay people to come on the podcast? Each person to come on the podcast. Everyone always asks me how much I paid Andrew Tate to come on the podcast. Do you really want to know? I think everyone watching this wants to know. Are you ready to hear the scary figure? Hit me, bro. 100 grand, which is absolute cap. I paid him nothing. I don't pay guests anything. Has anyone ever asked you for money? Yeah, loads of, bro, not half. A lot of people have asked me for money. Like, I approach them for a podcast and they'll be like, yeah, can you get in touch with my manager? I'll ask the manager. They turn around and say, 5 grand just for audio. And I'm like, what? 5 grand just for audio? Again. Yeah, 5 grand just for an audio. And how much is it for a video? with audio, probably looking at 10 grand for visuals and you know, audio. But 5 grand, like, you're taking the absolute. Have you ever had a podcast where it's taken off and it's done extremely well and then they've turned around and said, you know what, take it off, take it down? Yeah, but I don't know how much I could talk about it. There was a podcast that I'd done that had to be taken down after like 100,000 views. Yeah. And it doesn't hurt or anything like that. But it was like one of them ones. And people in the comments. Are you sure it don't hurt? Do you know what? It hurt at the time because I was like, oh my God. But it was like 6 months after the podcast went out and he had done all the views. So, you know, the YouTube money had still come from it. But then I had to take it down. It was such a sick episode as well. And the people in the comments will know who it was, but I'm not going to say who it is. But that was... Is it still down or is it back up? Yeah, it's still down. It's still down. Is it going to come back up? I've asked that person if we can do another one. So I'm just waiting for their response and trying to convince them to... Have any of your podcasts been taken off of YouTube by YouTube? No. Like, have they been struck down? No. But then do you think that limits you to the questions that you ask? What, like you can't ask everything freely, everything that you'd want to, everything that some people would want to know. Oh, you know what? There's certain agendas and certain topics that you can't talk about online at all. And I'd rather avoid that conversation entirely. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a bit crazy, the world that we live in. So would you ever set up a separate website where you just post like exclusive, and I'm talking heavily exclusive content? Yeah. That's so do you know, that's a good transition into what I'm going to do for the future. So CEOCAST eventually, hopefully by this time comes out, my guy who's going to run this, he's going to set up a Discord where, and our own website, the CEOCAST.com, where people can join. And it'll be such a sick service where, you know, you'll know which guests are going to come on board and we're going to come on the podcast. So you can ask your questions directly to that guest. What is that, through Discord? It's going to be through Discord and our own website. Discord's mainly going to be the community where we say the updates for CEOCAST in the future events, things that are going to be coming up. The people in that chat, or whether it's Discord or whether it's another service, they're always going to get priority because they're the ones that are in there and they're part of the community, right?
So you're going to get the chance to ask the guests your own questions. You're going to get the chance to come to events. You're going to be chance to come to live podcasts in the flesh. So how would that work? Would it be free? Would people have to pay? Or I haven't thought about that yet. And the only reason why I would be paid, if it was to be paid, is probably because there'd be a team behind it which need to be paid. I wouldn't benefit financially from it, but the team who are doing it, they'd obviously need to be paid to make sure that it's run efficiently. So can someone pay their way to be on CEOcast? No. And I'll tell you why. Because it doesn't work like that. It just doesn't work like that. You're literally paying me for the exposure. And sometimes, don't get me wrong, the money is very good, because I've had them offers before where people say, look, I'll give you 5 grand, 10 grand to come on the podcast with you. Are you up for it? And most of the time, they're just trying to shell their flipping course of some sort. Yeah. And they're trying to scam for whatever reason it is. So there's no way I'm going to do that to my audience. No way I'm going to host someone who's, in that industry just for a quick change. Do you know what I mean? Like, if I believe in myself and I have that integrity and I remain with that integrity, that money will make itself later on down the line anyway. I'm always about like long-term vision, even with like brands and sponsors, for example. I only work with brands and sponsors that I really truly believe in and use on a daily basis. So now that, alhamdulillah, you have a successful podcast and I'm extremely proud of you as my brother, do you get a lot of sponsorships? Yeah. But I think it's more interesting with the sponsors that I haven't taken on board because of what it's been. I've had a lot of gambling services, whether it be, I can't name them just in case I get sued for whatever reason, but I've had a lot of gambling services that have wanted to sponsor the podcast. I've had a lot of alcohol brands that wanted to sponsor the podcast. I had a brand reach out to me within one of these two industries that wanted to sponsor a whole season, and it was good money. How much is good money? I think, if I remember correctly, it was about 20 grand, something like that. And that point there, how many subscribers did you have? 40,000 roughly. So at 40,000 subscribers, someone was willing to pay 20 grand for sponsorship. Yeah. Over how many episodes? 10. So that is about 2 grand an episode. 2 grand an episode. Yeah. And just break that down for people who don't know. How does that work exactly? Is there any sort of exclusivity behind it, or how does it exactly work with the whole sponsorship stuff? Yeah. Exclusive. In that industry, it was exclusive. But I just couldn't do it because I can't align myself with those brands and those, or not those brands, that industry in what it was. I can't talk. It was alcohol, and I'm a Muslim. I can't sell myself out like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to go into religion too much on this podcast, but I just couldn't do that. It just wouldn't make sense. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, selling myself 20 grand for alcohol to come and jump on the podcast. Like, there's no benefit in that for me. But what other ways are podcasts able to get paid? There's so many different avenues, man. There's so many of what avenues. You know, not something that you've heard, but something you've experienced firsthand. Like, what else is there? Okay, so not just podcasts, but this goes for all YouTube channels in general. Yeah, you got merch. You got your YouTube income, like Google AdSense. You got sponsors. You can have different events. People now charge for Discord. There's so many different avenues that people put in under their YouTube channel umbrella sort of thing. And that's exactly what I'm going to do in the future soon. So I was going to do merch at one point. Then I thought, who really watches a podcast and wants a CEO top? It don't really make sense. Yeah, why don't you do merch? Like, you don't have merch. Because I was going to at first, yeah. The first ever podcast you saw me wearing a CEO top was with Fireway Pizza, Mario. Yeah. And I was going to start merch then. But then I was deep in it. I was like, who watches a CEO podcast and decides, I want a CEO top now? And don't get me wrong, there probably are some, but it's not enough demand to order that many quantity and whatnot. But look, you never know until you try, man. I might try in the future. I might dabble in it, see what it's saying. Maybe you should ask the people, should you have merch? Let us know in the comments. 100%. Should CEOcast release CEO merch? Yeah, let us know in the comments and whatnot. So tell me more about this CEOcast event. CEOcast event, well, hopefully, if I don't do this, by the time this comes out, there will be a CEOcast event. And it's going to be one of the biggest entrepreneur networking events, live podcast events you will ever see come out of the UK. So tickets should be in the link in the description right now to get that. But that is going to be one of the sickest events. We've chosen a venue already. We've chosen our guests. It's going to be about 500 people. And it's going to be, words can't describe it, putting this into feeling, like seeing the subscribers and seeing people who really support CEOcast at the event. It's going to be amazing. So what would the net worth of that event be? 5 billion. No, I'm joking. I don't know. No, do you know what? I don't know. You got to remember that the guests are going to be in their own net worth anyway, because they're going to be aspiring entrepreneurs, or they already are entrepreneurs that make their own money. There could be people within the property industry, the e-commerce industry, different industries within the guests themselves. And then you're going to have the audience guests, which are going to be the exact same thing. So it's going to be like, for example, one of my friends, he loves property, yeah? I don't know if he loves it, but he likes it, yeah? But there might be other property entrepreneurs there where he might learn a whole ton from. And there might be e-commerce side of it, which he can learn from. There's going to be so many different things where people can learn from one another. And that's what I really want to bring to the community. So what does the future of CEOCAST look like? Do you have any guests in line that are going to be spectacular, that are going to come on, like someone along the lines of Andrew Tate, or what we talking? Yeah. So the guests are planned in the pipeline like 3 months in advance. Yeah, so I already know the next guest for the next 3 months, and it's going to keep going like that. And there's some incredible guests. And
Can you give us a name?
No, I can't give any names. I can't give any sneak peeks because I don't want to ruin anything and I don't want to jinx anything either. But they're incredible guests. Like, they will set bars and standards for CEOcast, and we'll just keep breaking that barrier. And where do you think those guests will take your channel to, let's just say subscribers level? Okay, subscriber wise, right now we're recording this on the day I hit 100,000. Yeah, I reckon if we were to keep at that rate of those sort of caliber of guests, by this time next year, we should be on minimum, a combined with other things that we're going to have going on the channel and whatnot, 500,000 subscribers minimum. 500,000 subs. And how long do you think it will actually take you to get 1 million subs? Like, are you going to do anything different? Obviously, you've just had podcasts on the channel the entire time. Are you going to do anything different now to make you get from 100,000 subscribers all the way to 1 million? Yeah. CEOcast is going to be more than just a podcast now. There's going to be different. I don't want to ruin too much because I don't want any other podcasts or anything like that steal my ideas and whatnot. But there's going to be more than just podcasts, and I'm just going to leave it as that pretty much. That's all I'll say. But you'll see in the future exactly what we've got coming. The team knows, I know, everyone's excited for what we've got planned. Like, yes, we hit 100k subscribers today, but we're so excited, way more for the future of past this 100k subscribers. We've all been waiting for this 100k subscriber mark just so we can now process this next plan. Do you get what I'm saying? Do you think hitting 100k has actually opened new doors for you? Not necessarily. It's more of a ego feel sort of thing, more of a satisfaction like that. But I don't think it's opened new doors necessarily. It's always going to be the same thing. So you're traveling, you're taking CEOcast international? We've already been doing that. Dubai, we've going to Dubai. We're going to America. Can I say that? Should I say that?
Yes, say that.
Right,
say
we're
that.
going to America this year. Yeah. Fingers crossed. Been invited down to Australia, so going to go down to Australia. Where else have you been invited to? No, I can't. We're going to have to cut that one because I can't say that. Actually, no, I already said that in the podcast anyway. Yeah. But no one knows what for. So we're going to Germany. Yeah, man. We're going international with this. You're going to start hiring a team now that you're growing? Yeah, 100%. When these different avenues come on board for CEOcast, like different projects part of CEOcast, that's when there'll be an actual, you know how I talked about employed team and like people who should be around? There'll actually be an employed team of people like editors and thumbnail designers and all of this and all of that. Just so me and the creative directors on board of CEOcast can plan accordingly, plan for the future, and make sure that we're hitting every single goal and milestone that we set out. So right now you do all that sort of stuff yourself. Yeah. How did you learn? Did someone teach you or self-taught, bro? Self-taught. You know this. I've been up late nights and everything trying to learn how to edit. It's all self-taught. No, I think hopefully this has been an insightful, great podcast from myself and you as my brother. And we will make it clear right now, this podcast has been extremely hard to film and edit. If you've made it here this far, you wouldn't I haven't got a twin, right? The way this podcast has been filmed it's been a crazy one. We've been sat here for 2 hours trying to film this. I do hope I've answered all your questions that you've had. And yeah, I appreciate you for 100k subscribers. We got onwards and upwards from here. Yeah. And let's get it, man. All right, Raheem, for the last minute of this video, we're going to do quick fire questions. Go on, let's ask the audience. Quick fire.
Where are you going to put your 100k plaque?
100k plaque's going straight in my room, right next to my computer where I edit.
In the boot, taking a spin.
No. Do mum and dad still think you're working at BT?
Still think you're working at BT?
I've never, you know what, that's so funny you asked that. I've never red-handedly told them, even till today, that I've been fired from BT. So if they ask me, you still at BT? I'll be like, yeah, I'm still here. Still at BT. Yeah. But you know what it is? They've always been supportive, but they don't understand at the same time the whole YouTube game. Like, yes, they say they're proud of me and everything like that, but they don't understand that being a full-time YouTuber is, you know, it's just like having a business. And you know what it is? The old school mentality, they can't comprehend not going to uni. Our parents are Pakistani, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, they want us to be doctors and go to uni and all that sort of stuff, but uni is a day and age where it's done out. Yeah. Next question. Go on. If you could get one guest on right now, any person in the world, who would it be? Andrew Tate.
Again?
Yeah, I'll tell you why. Because he reverted to Islam after the podcast. Yeah. So I want to know what his journey in Islam has been like. I want to know what his whole experience of the prison has been like. The Matrix has been after him. They've attacked him. I want to know what that's like. And I want to get Tristan. If I could do a podcast, with Tristan and Andrew together, that would be amazing. And don't forget, me, Shoaib, Haseeb, all of the boys, if we were there in Dubai for New Year's, and that's the reason why we went to do that podcast. But the day we landed, they got bagged in Romania. It's mad.
Was that your Quran in the video that's going viral?
I don't think that was my Quran in the video that Andrew Tate, No, I can't lie. I don't think it was. I'm not going to lie. But where would he get another Quran that looks exactly like yours? Don't know. I don't know if it was the exact one that, it's not clear enough to see. Maybe if I do a podcast, I'll ask him.
Which host have you learned the most from?
Which guest or which host?
I mean, sorry, which guest have you learned the most from?
You learn a lot from different guests, man.
But out of all of the ones that you've done, which one would you say has inspired you and you've learned a lot from?
That's so hard to say, man. Honestly, that's so hard to say. I love every single podcast I do, and I learn something from every single podcast. But off the top of my head, maybe someone like Risa Barra. The guy's so clever. I've met up with him more than once in just the podcast, and he's super intelligent, man. The way his brain works is something else. Honestly, credit to Reese, because I think he goes a bit underground with people's radar, but don't ever mistake the guy. Like, the guy is a flipping genius. Okay, yeah. Starting your own business, best advice I can give is stick at it and cut costs where you can. Go for profit. Everyone says, do it for your passion at first. Do it for passion, but also do it for profit, because you need the profit to grow. Yeah, if you're doing it for passion and you're making a loss, your business ain't going anywhere. Yeah, it's going to go down a dark hole. So make sure you're doing it for passion and purpose and profit. And how much of the money have you made from CEOCAST have you reinvested back into CEOCAST to grow where it is right now? Every single penny. Well, that explains the Slazninja socks. All right, last words of advice for people, for content creators especially, because I feel like a lot of people are going to be looking up to this in terms of where the channel's at, and they're going to want advice. Whatever you're doing, make sure you stick at it, be consistent, plan your content ahead. So if you're a vlogger, just note some ideas down, write down exactly what sort of vlogs you're going to do, whether it be a day in the life, maybe it be a car video, maybe it be food shopping, whatever the case may be. Write it down and plan your vlogs for the next 3 months at least. Same thing with podcasts. Make sure you plan your guests. Make sure you plan everything to a T. Be consistent. Make sure you don't miss a week. Make sure you don't miss. Say to people that you're going to be posting on this day. Open up your other channels, for example, your TikToks, your Instagrams, your Twitters and stuff, and direct all of that traffic that you get there to your YouTube channel, because those play a big part in where your YouTube channel gets. Most importantly, just love what you do. You can't do a podcast if you hate podcasts. You can't do vlogs if you hate vlogging. You have to love a podcast to do a podcast. You have to love vlogging to do vlogging. Do you know what I mean? So all of that combined, and as well as, learning about thumbnails, make sure you do a lot of self-learning as well. And you'll be able to smash it what you do in YouTube. And then you'll be making some serious YouTube money, like Mr. Beast money. Better than the plaque, yeah. And this actually means a lot. And I know I didn't make it clear when she started, but Noah Art Studios is currently in this podcast right now, which I'm sure you would have seen in the B-roll. I haven't seen it yet, so I don't actually know what it is, but I know it's a painting of myself, maybe CEO costing 100k. That would mean more than the plaque, because that's like a proper personal item sort of thing. On that note, we're going to end the podcast here. I hope you all enjoyed it. It is now 12 at night, or 10 past 12, and we are recording this podcast. Make sure you follow your dreams, do all that sort of good stuff. Subscribe, that's even better stuff. And like, share, subscribe, the whole lot. Yeah, if you got any questions for me in this podcast that I did not answer, make sure you come to that event. The tickets are on sale right now in the description. So make sure you grab some, and you can ask me and meet me in person and ask me whatever you like. And I have all the time of day for all of you. So appreciate you all subscribing. This is a 100,000 special. I didn't really want to do this podcast because I'm too humble for it. Well, Raheem, I can't, we've spoken for about a good hour and a half now. I can't bother to hear the rest of it. So I'm going to end the podcast right here, right now. And I'm never ever going to be a guest ever again.